Anyway.
Video games.
So, dude, what? It's so funny. The other night, Ryan and I are having dinner, and he's like, "So, what kind of game do you think I'm making?" I'm like, "You bastard! Why don't you just tell me?" He's like, "No, this is more fun."
It is more fun,
and
more fun for me.
And we were trying to guess. And by the way, it did say iOS.
Yeah,
more than once.
Yeah, that did come up.
And you being Kurt and coy, you being coy, not Kurt. You being coy was like really. You were trying to throw us off. You were totally trying to throw us off.
No.
Yeah, you were. You were trying to throw us off just to see what kind of response it would be. But anyway, Camouflaj's first game, Republique, stars Hope, who is trapped in a. Well, I'll let you tell the story.
Well, yeah, the game is all about your relationship with an AI character, and the idea of the game was just started when I was hanging out with a good friend of mine, Alex Telvich, who owns this studio pretty nearby here in Venice, California, called Logan. And Logan is a production company that's responsible for the opening movie of Metal Gear Solid 4, and that's how he and I got to know each other, because that was one of the things I had. I was kind of as a producer on Metal Gear owning, and so I was coming back and forth between LA and working on that for almost a year. It was a very long project, but anyway, so Alex and I kind of sat down. I told him my idea that I wanted to work on a game that, because I really, up until that point, I really looked down on mobile titles and iOS titles, and I thought, this would be a really interesting challenge to create a game that I would really like to play, and something that was story driven. I'm not really into social games. I'm not really into like these kind of bite-sized Tiny Tower. Although I do like Hero Academy, but that's very much an exception to the rule. So I really want to write a story and design a game that's specifically for a device that's in your pocket. And so that was really the idea of the game. And so initially we just started having these ideas that what if when you start the game for the first time, you get a phone call from somebody you don't know, and then you answer it, and there's this beautiful looking girl on the other side who's in trouble and says, "Hey, my name is Hope. I'm 22 years old. I've been stuck in this facility my entire life. Please help me." Okay, you already got me intrigued the moment my brain...
You said 22?
No.
Old?
That's a little old for me.
Oh, jeez.
Wow. The moment my mind clicked together, I'm holding a phone that I'm going to play a game on, and it's going to whoa, that's really cool.
Well, thank you.
And it's sort of harkens back to a game that I think was way ahead of its time, Majestic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Majestic, that comes up when I tell people about the game. Other ones are Lifeline.
Well, Lifeline, bro. So you should tell the rest of the story, because we were just talking about Lifeline, because we have a huge joke running. Well, I have a huge joke that I remember back from EGM days of Crispin telling her to do horrible things and the weird responses.
Okay, so how about I tell the
rest of the story
a little bit,
yes.
And then we'll talk about this really horrific story about Lifeline.
We don't really need to do that story. But talk about your game.
All right. Well, so that's the. So honestly, what I ended up doing late last year was initially pitching this idea to some companies, some publishers, about this idea of kind of like a Mass Effect game with a really good looking 3D character on the other side, where you can have like these dialogue trees, and it's maybe more like Heavy Rain, and people were really interested in it, but they were really worried about like what the core gameplay loop is. Right? They were basically saying you're approaching this game from very much like an interactive narrative perspective, and we like games like Heavy Rain, but yeah, this is maybe too high risk. And this kind of leads into some of the Kickstarter conversation we can talk about later in terms of the amount of risk that publishers are willing to take. So I kind of went back to the drawing board, and we started just designing, like, well, if we're going to add some action elements to it, what should we do? And through concept art, we realized early on that because your connection with this girl who's locked in this facility, and she has a phone that she found, because in this kind of totalitarian nation, phones are outlawed. You cannot contact the outside. But one of the facility workers there had a phone. She got a hold of this contraband phone, calls the only number on it, which happens to be your phone. So we're trying to integrate the player into the story as much as possible. And so through concept art, we're realizing that, look, if players are hacking into this facility and viewing the world from surveillance cameras, then we're doing these top-down views that look very much like Resident Evil. And it was very serendipitous when we started thinking about, well, we can do pre-rendered backgrounds and focus all of the CPU power of the iPad and the iPhone onto the character, and then have some. It's kind of going old school, what like in 32-bit era, where what games like Resident Evil and Parasite Eve had to do to really get some kind of cinematic gaming experience.
I think probably did that too. Yeah,
probably very similar performance trade-offs that they looked at a decade ago,
absolutely,
to accomplish that same thing.
And it really shows. I mean, by the time you were listening to this,
you could talk about what you saw. The trailer's out next week.
The trailer's out on Monday.
Okay, so you can't see the trailer yet. We watched the trailer. And it really shows. It doesn't look like an iOS game. It looks it's very high quality visuals.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, the team has been working really, really hard, and I really pushed them to have the same poly count and the same verts and the same bone count as around what an MGS4 character would have.
Wow.
And there were people like, this is insane. This is just an iPhone. And I'm like, no, it's an iPhone.
You're right. No, I know it's an iPhone.
Yeah, it's a very different way of thinking, right?
Do you guys worry about which iPhone version people are going to download? Is it like, well, you can only get it on a 4 or a
So we're going to have to do
3G?
something like what Infinity Blade 2 has to do, where it's like from this version above. Mm-hmm. And we're trying, like the low end, we're in that weird line between a 3GS and a 4. And so I don't think we're going to promise it for 3GS yet, but we're really going to try to get it to work for the 3GS.
And when you kind of found that the need to add in that sort of repeatable, what was the phrase you used?
The core gameplay loop.
Yeah, gameplay
you
loop.
love that?
I like
Yeah.
that.
That just spills off your tongue so smoothly.
Yeah,
You can tell I've had to talk about that quite a bit in various pitch meetings.
does that frustrate you that you sort of have to funnel your vision through that expectation? Or I mean, I'm sure you found a great compromise and you're clearly excited about the game you made, but I'm wondering if that is just conceptually as a frustrating thing of like, I can't really go too far afield.
Absolutely, no, I think you're absolutely right. And yeah, I really want to go in left field, and in my career, I hope I can really go into a really different direction and make a game that had really nobody's ever played before. Mm-hmm. So to answer your question, yes, I was frustrated, but then honestly, around that time, it was around October, I was playing a lot of Dark Souls and getting back into this whole idea of like, I like action games because I was really turned off for a number of years about what was happening in the AAA space when it came to action. We kind of talked about like the whole roller coaster aspect of things, and it really brought back that game sense to it. And so the first thing we started doing then was prototyping, having Hope move from cover to cover. She has limited amount of ammo, like with the taser that she's carrying, that she's kind of collected off of other guards, and that whole math you have to do of like, you have a room of 5 patrolling guards, you move from cover to cover, but you only have 3 taser shots. Which of the 5 guards do I need to take down to help her get to the next room? And really trying to make it more sandboxy. So one of the most terrifying things I think for me this morning has been to see the news online and then go and see what people are saying. And
Sure.
And I saw some comments about people saying that this looks like a really boring point-and-click adventure and that it's very scripted. And that's actually, maybe it's my fault in terms of trying to communicate the game, but it's the exact opposite of what we want to do. We want to have a very sandboxy and really, a good action game that really gets your blood, or like the tension up and get your adrenaline running.
So there's a sort of narrator approach for how the player is contacting the in-game character of Hope. Mm-hmm. So there is sort of a layer of removal as you're guiding her and what's going on. She's trying to escape this facility. You did ultimately come to a core gameplay loop, right?
We did. We found it, and moving forward, the team,
what's that look like?
What the core gameplay game or what the core loop looks like?
Yes.
So I can give you an example of like a room that we were working on.
That'd be great.
A few months ago now. And that was just, we had a room with different pillars and some cover points, and we put 2 guards that are patrolling around, and we were trying to figure out a way, to try to address some of my complaints about stealth action games like Metal Gear, that once you go through it one time, you know exactly what to do, and the replayability.
It's solvable.
And you just learn the pattern, right?
Yeah.
And so one thing we've been trying to do is try to mix up the patrol routes. So actually in the proof of concept that you see in the trailer next week, there is actually a randomizing element of the patrol routes to try to make it so when players go back to rooms, again, like the mansion in Resident Evil, I want players to become more familiar with the space as opposed to going in a linear path. Mm-hmm. And to go back to that example of that room that we were working on, again, to try to make it more sandboxy and make it more dynamic, we introduced this idea of distraction objects. So players can not only tap on touch on different cover points to send Hope to those areas, but they can also touch and hack into anything with a Wi-Fi connection. So it could be a computer, it could be lights on a panel, it could be like a retractable blinds on a window to give her cover, or to turn off the lights to distract the guard, to blind the guard.
Oh gosh!
Or I'm sorry,
I flashed. What was that GameCube game?
That GameCube game. There was a lot of GameCube
the one
games.
Where you the one where you flashed your spirit into.
Oh, you're talking about Geist.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, so you're gonna be able to hack into and become dog food. And again, that's a feature. Right. So that's really talking about the
Ghost Spirit just came out last year, right? For the
Ghost
DS.
Trick. Ghost Trick was a huge inspiration.
It's a great game.
Eco was an inspiration for Hope because you don't control Yorda. She has a mind of her own, and you still feel a connection to her, and almost maybe more of a connection because she isn't a marionette.
Yeah.
And we're pulling lots of different inspiration from lots of different things.
It looks great.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate
would
it.
say that it does. I agree. It doesn't look like an iOS game.
No.
But the prospect of playing it that way, now that I know the the initial hook and I'm playing through this sort of tactile real world, duplicating what I'm doing in the virtual world.
Acknowledging that you're playing on a device and working that into the narrative is pretty exciting to me. That's sort of
Now, because I'm not associated or employed at a big publisher anymore, or a big company, one of the things I really enjoy about being independent is that I can tweet about something or I can talk about something without having to think like, where am I going to get fired for this? And one of the things I really want to bring up that maybe I wouldn't be able to bring up if I was being represented by a publisher right now, or if I was working at a big company, is some of my deep down fears right now about what's going on with the reaction of the game, and that we started off like I said, I wanted to make a game that I thought I would like to play, that was more story driven, that respected the platform and not did virtual joysticks, but really utilized what the device does, which is it's a touch based device, and then I like you said, don't read the comments, and I've been reading the comments, and there's a lot of people who are excited about, hey, this is the kind of game that I want for the phone. This is for the iOS. I see the future. I understand. Maybe they believe like me that there is space for serious games like this that might not be 99 cents or freemium. But then there's also other comments about people like, iOS, what the hell? And this is, count me out. And there's a lot of hatred for that platform as well. And I think it kind of surprised me. And now it's making me a little bit worried about our Kickstarter campaign that's starting next week, because we're looking to raise, a pretty good chunk of money. And it's not for PC, tablets, Mac, PC, or Linux. It's iOS, right?
Yeah.
And can we raise, a good chunk of money and kind of follow in the suit of what Wasteland did or Double Fine, and now with Shadowrun? Can we
guarantee
do that with just one platform?
I guarantee you there are a bunch of people writing somewhere about Double Fine going, a freaking adventure game? Screw that. I don't want, I'm sure there's plenty of that. So I wish you all the best. And I suspect you'll find a strong support base.
Taking a different approach, a lot of time iOS games are produced on much shorter time horizons. Doesn't sound like this is one of those. What's your projected once you spin up and really get going on it?
Well, we're already spun up.
Okay.
I sold all of my everything I basically owned except for the house, but and I liquidated all my stock from Microsoft and spent my entire life savings to get us to this point. And so now we have a proof of concept in the trailer, and that's about it. Wow. And I've hired 5 guys have been sacrificing. Some people are not even getting paid. And when we're working with Logan, that's doing this all in the pocket, not knowing where this thing is going to go. But we all believe, and I still believe, that there is a space out there for this. That this fear that I have right now is going to go away. And once somebody proves, other than Infinity Blade, which I'm glad it's out there. That's one of the games that really inspired me. It's like, wow, maybe the market is ready for this. So again, I'm still nervous about next week, but I'm still going to do it. I'm still going to go. I'm not going to lower expectations. I'm not going to lower the goal that we were thinking. I'm going to put it out there and see if people respond. And if they don't, we now know. Maybe it's not. Maybe the game isn't good, and maybe that's why it wasn't successful. But it's going to be a good indication of how long.
So how long a production runway do you think to make the thing?
Oh, sorry, I didn't answer your question. Yeah, so we're looking for a year. We've planned out a year of production, so it'll be around. I'd like to get it out around spring of next year. But we have one little added hook to the game that makes it, I think, pretty unique. That I'm looking to announce in the next couple of weeks, and that might delay or extend the release date out maybe by another month or two.
My theory is that the secret sauce of Kickstarter, and maybe it's not so secret, maybe it's obvious to everybody, but is the incentives.
Yes, absolutely.
And I think that's super important to
So can you partner with Samsung and get everybody like a Galaxy S5 when it comes out now?
I wish. I think there's 2 secret sauces, if you will. One is that I think what Double Fine proved is that a lot of the success in Kickstarter is that you're pre-purchasing the game. Right? I mean, that before it was like, please donate to my game and I'll give you a wallpaper or something.
Yeah.
But now I'm thinking, I'm going to buy this game when it comes out anyway. I'll support them. I actually think there's a huge business that's going to happen in the next few years where, for example, what if, and I know I'm getting off track a little bit, but if Sega, for example, opened up Shenmue3.com and said, if you pledge $40 for Shenmue 3 or $50 for Shenmue 3 and we got up to the 10 million mark or the 20 million mark, we'll make the game. I'm pretty sure.
I agree.
They could fund it that way. Yeah, for sure.
And that's really exciting.
That's an interesting question. On Shack, actually, in the thread last week, Agent R brought up Kickstarter because it's been really, it's been a big subject for us. We have a story here about Shadowrun, which we're going to talk about in a couple of minutes, which will blend into this. Wasteland, now over $2 million raised for that game. And Agent R asks, should publishers actually adapt and adopt a Kickstarter model for games where sales prospects are unknown, although interest level on the internet seems very, very high? And it ties right into something you talked about with Sega as well, where I have to find who was that? My SSSS actually brought this up in regard to it seeming like Sega is dying, and all of these properties that are sitting out there that never got sequels that would be love to have a sequel, like Shining Force, Skies of Arcadia is still sitting out there. You brought up Shenmue.
Lots of great IP.
Lots of great IP. So what about a publisher going this direction? And I guess the other thought while you're thinking about that, answering that, is the one piece that does come to mind for me is the one potential challenge for a pre-order mentality in this is that means that you're already spending the money that would come from the sales of the game. Mm-hmm. So if you fall off your timeline and you get into an extended situation, like there's nothing to borrow money against because you've already sold the game. You've already sold it. There's only a finite amount of revenue coming from that. Now, granted, you could still sell more copies, but you're back to really sensitive situation.
And I think that's why if you have audience members out there that are sick of hearing about Kickstarter, then they should just get off the internet because there's going to be so many stories for years to come. Because what if one of these games that are getting funded right now comes out and it's not good?
What about when that happens?
Wanting to bring that up,
it's going to happen.
Yes.
Like, what if my game comes out and it's not good? Like,
yes.
What kind? Is there going to be a class action lawsuit? Like that will happen. I guarantee that will happen.
Yeah. Or if not just that it comes out and it's not good. What if it doesn't come out?
What if it never comes out and the team's gone and who's going to make it?
Exactly, and who's responsible? Yeah. And that is going to happen. I don't know if it's going to happen
tonight
in the video game
on
space.
60 Minutes.
Well, I don't know if it's going to happen in the video game space or in some other space, but there is going to be a Kickstarter scandal, for lack of a better word, of that is going to really test the viability of that business model because.
Melissa Stevens from Grand Rapids, Idaho, invested $150 in this game. It's now
never
gone.
Arrived.
Which never arrived, or didn't come out as advertised, or was a outright fraud that some unscrupulous individuals perpetrated on a.
We went to this office park in Des Moines.
Well, I think that's you mock it, but it's true, dude.
No, I'm not. I'm mocking it only because it will happen.
But don't Kickstarter's terms and conditions sort of mitigate a lot of that problem?
And they do, right? I think in the legal text, I haven't read the fine print, but I think it's something to the extent of you recognize that this thing might not ever come out, and you're not going to sue us,
right? But then that may have a even worse.
It's as good as the paper it's written on.
It might be even,
and it's not even written on paper.
An even worse result, which is undermining the trust system that people have in Kickstarter. I mean, Kickstarter has completely revolutionized the board gaming industry. It has changed it 100%, and it's just starting as you say in the video game industry. And I think.
Have board games that were kickstarted come to fruition already?
Oh, many of them.
Okay, that's good.
Wow. Many of the big games
I didn't realize
the biggest games of the year last year and the year before were Kickstarter games.
That's awesome because one of my concerns has been that I wondered how many products and projects had actually gone the distance and come to fruition because it seems like there's this groundswell, and that's because I'm a video gamer, and so I'm just now getting aware of it. And video game projects take a while. Yeah. So there's not one I can just say already, oh, well, that's what happened there.
And that's an interesting point, too, is that, as you guys know, you've seen games in various levels of production, like from the very beginning near the end, is that when you come out and start thinking about what game you want to make, you have some bullet points and some features, and things change. It's a creative process, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And, a lot of these games, and one of the things that we were trying to do, and we're almost literally betting the farm on, is that with our Kickstarter campaign, we want to come out and show that the game is already moving, right? It's not just an idea, but we actually have something that people have played. And a lot of articles are going to be coming out next week of people actually were able to play the game and give impressions. And we felt that was really important. But for what about these games are just ideas and bullet points? Yeah. It's going to be games transform. Like, what if it's not as advertised?
And using Kickstarter as a way to sidestep publishers, there's a lot of checks and balances that sort of happen, game testing that happens that structure has built up over time to sort of make a product in a specific way. And when you sidestep that and create a completely new way to come out with a product, I'm not saying it's necessarily bad, but it certainly has the potential to be bad.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
and on that note, also what publishers bring is a good amount of pressure, right? Like this financial, like, hey, you're not getting your next check until you hit these deadlines, right? And And I think for a lot of teams that's really important. They need that to get to the finish line. But with that said, and I think maybe it was Tim Schafer who said this, is that they're even more motivated now than as opposed to having a publisher, because it's the community. These people have helped you, like, bootstrap you and get you to be able to make this game. How much more do you feel like you need to get there and give them a great game? I'm hoping that we're going to be in that position.
I mean, if back in the day somebody had said, "Hey, we want to make this game called Daikatana. Contribute to our Kickstarter."
Oh wait,
right?
You made Doom? Totally.
Exactly.
Oh, no.
The hype surrounding the announcement of that project, or Duke Nukem. We want to make Duke Nukem. You know,
Well, that actually might have
donate
helped that project.
$1,000 and you will get your own metallic frog.
yeah, right. I'm just saying that the industry is rife with examples of best laid plans, well funded, turns into a complete fiasco, and that it's just bound to happen sooner or later.
Such is the risk of any sort of philanthropic, venture, right? You invest money, or you're donating to something that's not done.
But I don't think people think about it that way. I don't think they think. I think they think about I'm buying something that is definitely going to be this thing.
Yeah, that's something that people have to get over. I don't necessarily think there's something inherently wrong with that idea or that system of fundraising.
But I think it's going to test people's faith in it, and I think that is going to be a really interesting social experiment, because once you have people going, well, I don't know if I can give my money to this kind of thing, it undermines the whole system.
So this is one side that I've been doing a lot of number crunching, looking at the Kickstarter successes. And there's a lot of people that are just pledging, basically pre-ordering the game, right?
Yeah.
But there's a huge amount, almost 50%, 40% of the revenue that people are bringing in are in that kind of mid-tier, like around the $100 level, where they're kind of purchasing, like in quotation marks, purchasing things that maybe aren't worth $100. So there's a little bit of that donation aspect of it too, which is really cool. And that's really forced us to think of really creative ways of, like, what are we going to offer at the $100 level, at the $50 level?
Well, there's a lot of passion though that's in play because especially a lot of these game projects are classic projects. So this, like, Shadow, so Shadowrun's coming back.
Feeling that they can make something happen that wouldn't happen otherwise.
Yes,
having an investment that way.
So I mean, look at the Shadowrun project, and I thought of that because one of the things that they offer is that if you donate some, and I forget what is a really big number, but they'll have, like, the creator of Shadowrun come to your city and host a tabletop game of Shadowrun for you and your friends. Like, okay, that's pretty crazy.
I think they pretty much sold out of that tier, which is awesome. But, like, in terms of the percentage of revenue, like, it's actually very small. That high tier, it's like they're kind of interesting talking points.
Yeah.
But like, like
so
the
it's a middle tier is what you're thinking.
Yeah, the middle tier is really interesting. So one thing that we're looking to do and I won't bore you guys with it, but I think what's really cool is that for a lot of these Kickstarter campaigns, for $100, you can get, like, a collector's edition. It's a physical item.
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of interesting that a lot of these games that first started off as physical games with really cool hint books and maps and things, they're bringing it back, and people are willing to pay upwards of hundreds of dollars to get those kind of collector's items. So for an iOS game, like, we can't package this into a box potential, or maybe we can. There are some options for that we're looking into.
You can always get Hope's iPhone case.
Well, we're looking into that, honestly. I don't know if you're joking, but not. But we are looking into that. And then we're also working on a book that is going to kill me if you think I look tired now. But there's going to be a companion book that's a little bit inspired by the Ni no Kuni book that they did for Nintendo DS.
Very cool.
But that you don't need to finish the game, but you can have in your pocket, and it's got lots of, like, maps, and has, like, the bad guy, the antagonist, his name is the Overseer. It has his manifesto written in it, and, like, basically a book that's been passed around in the revolutionaries inside this kind of totalitarian world that you can kind of get an eye.
Awesome.
And I hope people want it. I hope people like it.
Piece of swag, yeah.
And I hope as many people buy it as.
That's extremely cool. So Republique,
like it, so.
There's more information around the internet today. The Kickstarter will kick off on Monday, along with your ability to check out the video. Camouflaj is going to be really successful.
Well, thank you for saying that. I hope so. I'm nervous. I'm just excited to see what happens on Monday.
Well, we have to let you go back to work now.
I have to go finish the trailer.
Unfortunately, he's got to go finish the trailer that we saw that still had pieces that were like placeholder. Yeah, this belongs here.
Insert text and cool thing here.
Yeah, so go do your cool things.
Yeah,
we still have half a show to do here. So if you stick around when we come back on the other side, we still have some Borderlands 2 to talk about. We
Kid
still
Icarus.
have Kid Icarus to talk about. I'm playing Yakuza 4, but it's sort of
and Ridge Racer.
And I played some Ridge Racer Unbounded. I'll talk about that for a minute because
Jeff's got a
Bugbear did a fantastic job with that
indie game, didn't he?
I do. An indie game that I just started.
Yeah. So there you go. Stick around. Weekend Confirmed. We'll be right back.